Welcome to the NBA 2K G League show. I'm your host, Varun Chari, and welcome to the show. So, we have a great episode. We are going to be talking about how the Dennis Smith Jr. signing of the Dallas Mavericks affects the Texas Legends. Let's get straight into it. We have our Texas Legends preseason guide because we are now getting closer to their preseason. Here you can see there's a depth chart, but let's just get straight into the questions. So, Dennis Smith Jr. has signed with the Dallas Mavericks. Why does this specifically pertain to the Texas Legends? Well, Mark Stein recently reported that one reason Dennis Smith Jr. had signed with the Mavericks was so the Mavericks could secure his G League rights for the upcoming season. I think that's huge. Now, the only way obviously would be Exhibit 10 bonus. There are contracts to my understanding where it has Exhibit 9, but also Exhibit 10 language is as well. So I think this is probably the likelihood of how they're gonna get him as a player for the Legends. Now, here's the thing: Dennis Smith Jr. technically does have returning rights in the G League, so he did technically sign a G League contract last season, and he did intend to play in the G League, and he was trying to get to the Austin Spurs. Unfortunately, that did not happen. The way the player pool works is it's a rotating waiver, and so teams that typically don't have as great a record, get more of a priority in terms of picking players. And, for this situation last year, it was the Wisconsin Herd who got his rights. Austin could have very likely, gone him still. They would have had to trade for his rights. And so it just didn't end up happening. And the Wisconsin Herd still owned his rights. Now, technically, he did get bought out, I believe, last February to March. But remember, G League buyouts don't necessarily mean that's the same thing as being cut by a team. It typically means that if you're bought out, they still do have that player's rights moving forward, and they can still keep them potentially for trades like a situation like this, or if they want to keep that player, if they want to come back and play for the organization. We saw that last year with Jordan Bell. He had a buyout. I think it was actually 2 seasons ago, but then returned to play for the Mad Ants the season after. And so, it is definitely an option. And so that's definitely clearly something that, the Herd, I believe, still do own his rights. Now, obviously, another thing is that sometimes G League players or NBA players who have their rights with a G League team, typically, if the G League team doesn't want to bring that player back, then they can refuse that player's rights. And so maybe that is an option for how he could technically be an affiliate player rather than a returning rights player in this case. So, that's just something I'm monitoring pretty closely, but just wanted to first state that. But how does this really affect the Legends here, right? And so let's kind of get into the draft picks. Now, if he is a returning rights player, if you can see here, they have a lot of draft picks that they've accumulated over the years, and that goes, I tip off my hat to the Legends front office because they have a lot of draft picks, and they can definitely make a trade to the Herd to get Smith's returning rights. And so that is huge because he would, I would think, be the starting point guard for the Texas Legends, which would be kind of wild because Dennis Smith Jr. He was drafted in Dallas and eventually kind of moved around different parts of his NBA career. But, it'd be his first time to play in the G League if he actually does. He was even interested in it last season. Didn't obviously go the way he was hoping, but, he did have interest. He even did talk about 3 years ago that he wasn't playing for the New York Knicks to ask him to play for the Westchester Knicks. And, then I think there were some injuries and it just never ended up happening. And so at the end of the day, he's going to be a starting point guard, assuming that he does not make the roster for Dallas. He could very likely still make the Dallas Mavericks 15-man roster. That is something to really keep in mind as we're going into this season with the Legends, but also a training camp with the Mavericks. So as a point guard now, what I like about him being on this Legends roster is that he can be a good mentor to Ryan Nembhard. And I've continued to keep saying this, you have to have good vets on your G League team, especially for these young guys, especially the ones who are on two-way contracts who aren't going to be around the NBA team, as much. Having good, vets, I think is huge. And if you can bring in a guy like Dennis Smith Jr. to, be a good mentor to Ryan Nembhard, I think that's huge. Now the question is, how does that fit going to work, with Nembhard and Dennis Smith Jr.? I think Dennis Smith Jr. starts. I think you then bring off Ryan Nembhard off the bench as your backup point guard. But what is that? What the Mavs want to do from a developmental standpoint? Do they want Ryan Nembhard really coming off the bench? Do they want him starting games? Can you play Smith Jr. and Ryan Nembhard together? I don't know if I see that personally, but who knows? Like, we'll see what they do. We'll see what head coach Max Hooper does in his first season. But let's see what continues to happen. Kind of now continue to segue into Ryan Nembhard and Miles Kelly. We need to start talking about one of the most important things when the Mavs won the lottery and getting Cooper Flagg was they're looking for those pieces that are going to help that championship team that they're trying to build for in the future with Flagg. Is Ryan Nembhard and Miles Kelly those next guys up with Cooper Flagg? We saw him with the summer league team this year, this past summer, and you just never know who could maybe be part of that team in the future with Cooper Flagg. We also see here they have some affiliate players like Musa Cisse, I believe, from Memphis, and Matthew Cleveland from Miami. These are a couple of guys who also went undrafted, signed as an affiliate players, and will play for Texas Legends this year. But you never know who out of these guys could be part of a playoff to championship team with Cooper Flagg. And so that's really a huge thing about the Legends, is developing those guys, for the Legends, scouting out players who could eventually hopefully move up to the Mavs and help them. I think that's a huge thing here, as you continue to keep going with the season. There's always changes with head coaches, and now we see Max Hooper, who's been a previous video coordinator for the Dallas Mavericks, has been an assistant coach before, has played for the Westchester Knicks, actually when they were the D League back in the day in 2016. So he's been around the NBA, the G League, some time. He's kind of familiar with the Mavs, obviously being a video coordinator the past 2-3 years. So he's definitely familiar. I'm really excited for him to get his first head coaching position. It's going to be, I'm curious, how is he going to navigate some of these lineups like Dennis Smith Jr. and Ryan Nembhard. Something I am really excited about is the returning players that so far that have been announced. And one guy specifically that I'm excited about is Jamarion Sharp. Jamarion Sharp is a 7'5" center, obviously really long. I believe he played at Ole Miss in college, like his last year. He's actually a JUCO player as well. But one of my things last year is that I thought the Legends could have probably had a better point guard situation. I wanted them to have more pass first type of point guards who could really, get Sharp the ball, who could really help Sharp realize, like, he's 7'5", like, put it up, like, kind of like a similar thing with Wemby a little bit, but like, I wanted a point guard who could really get the ball to Sharp. And I'm excited when they got Ryan Nembhard on that 2-way contract, because I knew that has a potential chance to help Sharp's development as well. Potentially maybe as a center for the Mavs down the line, who knows. And another huge thing I did want to talk about was the Demoy Hodge signing that was just recently announced by the Mavs. Now, if you don't know about Demoy Hodge, he was a guard that signed with the Los Angeles Lakers in 2023 after the draft. He stayed with them on a 2-way till January 2024, and then he was cut, but really just to be traded, his returning rights to a Rip City remix. Played with the Trailblazers G League team really for the rest of the 23-24 season. Then he got his rights traded to the Maine Celtics in the Dimitris Kapintsev trade, and then was traded his rights from Maine to the Texas Legends for the Philip Wheeler trade. And so his rights have moved around a lot, but I just want to point this out because the Legends in that Maine Celtics Philip Wheeler trade got a 2026 first and second round pick from Maine and Demoy Hodge's returning rights. A lot of times we think, they just throw in these rights for returning guys, not actually knowing if they're going to play for the team. But here it actually did happen. And that is a pretty cool thing. I just wanted to point out, we're going to see Hodge come back to the G League. And so, that's going to be an exciting thing to watch. But, it just, again, shows that they got a really great deal in that Philip Wheeler trade. And we're going to continue to work out because it builds towards their draft picks that they can eventually use if they want to get the returning rights of Dennis Smith Jr. or other players. I think if you kind of look here at their depth chart, they still need to fill out more of their small forward. They still need to fill out more of their power forward. Another thing, too, is they actually did trade for Mark Armstrong, who, if you remember him from Villanova, he actually played for the Long Island Nets this past year and now will be returning to play for, the Texas Legends. And so I think that's also a huge thing is you have more point guard depth. If Dennis Smith Jr. actually ends up not joining the Legends and doesn't make the Mavs, or he does make the Mavs, you still have a good point guard who could potentially play for the Legends. So as you can see here, they have 5 2025 draft picks in this upcoming draft. Obviously, they can trade those picks for future draft picks with other teams. They can use these picks to get returning rights of players they want. So again, they're in a very good position. I think the Legends front office has been doing a really good job the past 2 seasons. And so, yeah, just really excited to see what they do. They drafted 3 guys in the G League International Draft also, like Wei Lin, Sergio Conciaco, and Alou Diarra. Again, I apologize for mispronouncing this, but some guys too that they have their draft rights if they want to potentially bring them over to the G League with the Legends for the next 2 seasons. But that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you think about the Mavs and the Legends this year. What do you think about Dennis Smith Jr. signing with the Mavs? Do you think he'll make the Mavs 15-man roster? If he ends up with the Legends, what do you think about this Legends team? Let me know your thoughts down below. But this is the NBA 2K G League show. I'm your host, Varun Charya. If you watch this video, feel free to subscribe, like, or dislike us. Hey, you do you. So, this is the NBA 2K G League show. I'm your host, Varun Charya, and peace.